My dad is the best cook in the world. It could be something as simple as a bowl of porridge on a Sunday morning, which technically is just a bowl of slime if you think about it. When my father made it, however, it would be the most delicious breakfast dish in the world. He used a special kind of oats, or maybe he bought the regular kind and made them special by cutting them even more finely. He would toast them gently to help extract their flavor, as he explained. Then he would boil them on low heat, taking his time as he prepared whatever would accompany the oatmeal or porridge. I'm never sure what the right name is, but I guess Dad's dish would be porridge simply because it sounds more delicious than oatmeal. My favorite kind of porridge is by far the one he calls birthday cake. He adds in vanilla, colorful sprinkles, and other stuff I forgot. And I kid you not, it's the best breakfast in the world. I know it doesn't sound as crazily innovative as I make it out to be. I suppose it really isn't, because I can use the exact same ingredients trying to mimic his dish, and all I achieve is oat slime with some melted sprinkles. And not because I'm a bad cook. My mom, for example, is a really decent cook as well, but she can never reach the explosion of flavors in a dish quite the same as my dad. Nobody can. You are such a liar. He can't be the best in the world. Also, you've never even left town. How would you know, Chris? That's what my disbeliever of a classmate Toby said after I told everyone that I knew for a fact that my dad was the best cook in the world and that one day he would travel to every country in existence to battle the best chefs on earth. Back then when we were around 6 or 7 and I had realized that my dad being such a genius was definitely something I had to use to impress everyone in elementary school with, and everyone believed me, saying how cool that was as if my dad was a superhero, except for that little know-it-all Toby, of course. If something is the best you can tell, Toby, it's not that hard. And also, everyone who comes to visit us says so too. So what? Anyone that visits is from here too, so they don't know the world, stupid. Shut up, Toby! He was right. Nobody who lived here ever left town and came back, so they really wouldn't know. And we never got visitors from outside. I still didn't appreciate him talking back like that, though. Toby was the biggest know-it-all of our class, and I was probably the biggest liar. We would bicker about stuff all the time, for years, which might make it more surprising that we somehow ended up becoming best friends. But now, 10 years later, we are practically inseparable. And thanks to our friendship, Toby even had the luck of trying Dad's food from time to time. He still thinks saying that he is the best in the world is an exaggeration, but simply because he doesn't like to admit that I'm right. If you think that breakfast sounded good, you should see what my father comes up with for dinner. Well, not see, you should taste it, though I'm afraid that's impossible. Dad only makes dinner for us on very rare occasions. He works a lot, and when he comes home, he is usually too tired to cook. So we only get a home-cooked dinner by my father when we get visitors. Visitors that are from our town always, never from the outside. A lot of them I know quite well. It's usually the same group, a circle of friends of my parents. They have this dinner party once or twice a year, and it's always at our house because everyone agrees that Dad is the best cook of them all. They spend other events together as well at other homes or places, but when it comes to dinner, it's always our home. The dinner parties are very similar each time, for me at least. The guests arrive, I say hello, they ask me embarrassingly boring questions about life and school, and then I go back up to my room. I never join them for dinner. Instead, Dad brings me up a plate of food that I eat in my room, which I certainly prefer and am thankful for. Often, Toby comes over as well and we hang out in my room while my parents have their party downstairs. Dad was hesitant at first when I'd asked if Toby could come as well, but as we got older, he agreed it was fine as long as we didn't disturb the party. It kind of has become our tradition to play video games or listen to music in my room and eat Dad's amazing food while my parents practice their own tradition downstairs. These nights might sound a little mundane, but I used to love every part of them. They've been the same for years now. Except for last night. Last night, things changed. As before every dinner party, Dad had been in the kitchen all day cooking while Mom decorated the dining room. I helped a little by chopping some vegetables and washing a few dishes in the afternoon. In the evening, before the guests arrived, Toby rang our bell and the two of us went up to my room to play a new Nintendo game that Toby got as a gift from his uncle. He always gave Toby the best gifts, but he recently moved away from this town. We got so into the game that I didn't even realize how much time had passed until Dad knocked on the door. As soon as it opened, a sweet smell spread through my room. Hints of cardamom, nutmeg, and most prominently pumpkin. Whoa, that smells amazing, Mr. Milner. What did you make? Oh, just some mashed potatoes with pumpkin and greens. We both knew whatever he made was far more special than that. Even when he used the most boring ingredients, he knew how to mix spices so perfectly that they tasted otherworldly. But when Dad said those words, he didn't sound like he was trying to be humble. He seemed exhausted, which was reflected through the empty look in his eyes. I got up to take the tray off his hand that had bowls of soup and 2 big plates full of the dishes my dad had been cooking all day. You alright, Dad? Oh, I'm fine. Just tired. Lots of cooking. Anyway, you know the rules. Enjoy the food, but stay in your room, alright? We both nodded. After the door was closed again, I put the tray next to Toby and sat down. Your dad seemed weird, he said. I don't think he likes dinner parties very much. He has to work and everyone else just stuffs their faces. Or maybe he's not much of a swinger and your mom makes him, Toby grinned. For the 100th time, my parents aren't swingers. Right, so why else are we not supposed to see what they're doing down there? Fuck off. Do you want to have dinner with all those old people? They're doing us a favor. Right, dinner, he grinned again. There was no part of me that believed that my parents were actually swingers, but Toby dared me to go look, and I wasn't scared to walk around in my own house, so why wouldn't I go check? That's what I said to him. I tried to act cool, but some part of me was really afraid of whatever was going on down there. You see, these parties have become such a normal event in our lives that I sometimes forget, or try to suppress, how weird they really are. First of all the guests arrived totally overdressed in cocktail attire and too much makeup. Everyone seems far too excited with big smiles that appear forced. My mother is one of them and enjoys the night to the fullest. My dad is more reserved. One person always brings a big package. I've never seen what's in it, though. That is usually all I see before going to my room. As I was tiptoeing down the stairs for the first time during a dinner party, my heart started beating so rapidly that I feared it might overshadow the classical music coming from our living room. Are you scared? A voice whispered in my ear as 2 hands grabbed onto my shoulder. I turned around to see the dark eyes of my friend and a massive grin on his face. You were meant to wait upstairs, dickhead, I whispered. I didn't want to miss the old guys going crazy. Old? Now that's a bit rude, don't you think? This time the voice wasn't coming from Toby, but Miss Collis, a friend of my parents and dinner guest, who apparently just walked out of the bathroom. Oh, hi, sorry, Miss Collis. We just came down to... I started muttering. I don't know why I felt so nervous. This was my home after all, but something about her big, widened eyes and the smeared lipstick around her mouth was extremely unnerving. Oh, don't apologize, dear. You two are quite grown up now. After all, I don't understand why your parents hide you in your room all night. I say you join us for dinner starting now. Come on. She grabbed first my hand, then Toby's. My friend and I exchanged a look of fear and curiosity. Look who I just found lurking in the halls. Miss Callis laughed loudly as we approached the living room. My mother had really outdone herself with the decorations. Big candles everywhere. Black tissues formed into pretty shapes. The chandelier above the table dimmed to a warm yellow. The only thing outshining the decoration was the food on the table. My eyes met the one of my mother, who looked less angry than I imagined. Actually, everyone looked at us smiling. They didn't seem that annoyed that we were interrupting. And luckily, nobody was naked. Why don't we make some space for the kids? Let them enjoy the delicious meal with us for once. They look quite grown up to me, Miss Calvis said, and everyone started mumbling. Chris, Toby, do you want to sit with us? My mother asked in a nervous tone. I looked over at my father, whose face had turned completely pale. Just as before, he had a strange look in his eyes, but now I realized that it wasn't exhaustion. It was fear. No, that's okay. We still have our food upstairs, I said. Nonsense, Miss Callis said. We have 2 empty seats right here. Tonight you will join us. End of discussion. It seemed way more normal than I'd have imagined at first, until they all started digging into the food as if they were starving animals, ripping off huge bites with their teeth, swallowing whole chunks of meat, and pouring it all down with red wine. No matter how wonderful I normally thought my father's cooking was, at the sight of this I felt a bit appalled. especially when I saw that my mother ate just as disgustingly. My mother, who normally was so incredibly proper and perfect. Only my dad was not focused on the food. He was staring at me, and his eyes were saying, "Run." Toby looked as if he found the whole event rather amusing and not as creepy or disgusting as it felt to me. I suppose he still thought they would start going wild soon, and in a way they were, I suppose, just not the way we imagined. "You're not eating, sweetie? Why's that? Your father's cooking is simply divine." Miss Cullen chuckled with her mouth full. She then proceeded to load a big spoon of shepherd's pie onto my plate. I didn't answer, but quietly took a small bite out of it. It tasted amazing, of course, like everything Dad makes. But I didn't see this dish on the tray that he brought upstairs for us. When I looked at all the food in front of us, I noticed something. The food my father had been cooking today, the potatoes and pumpkin mash, the caramelized onions, and the roasted asparagus with sauce hollandaise. He had prepared them perfectly on the plates for Toby and me. But now I realized that none of the food he had cooked was on this table, and suddenly I completely lost my appetite. My father was trying to warn us. The guests we have once or twice a year are friends of my parents, not by choice, I suppose. Their families have been part of this town for as long as it existed, and so have our ancestors. In a way, I suppose we are part of some kind of elite, although I never really felt like it, especially because of my dad, who was an incredibly down-to-earth person. I always thought the only reason he did these parties was for my mother, but as it turns out, there was another reason. Toby was the first one to leave. He asked to stay over, but I told him I wasn't feeling too well. The other guests stayed until late at night, having the best time you could imagine. My mother went to bed, exhausted with a full stomach, while Dad sat in the kitchen scrubbing the floor. The entire house was quiet and dark at this point. He thought I'd gone to bed as well. Monotonously, he scrubbed a stain on the wooden ground. "Dad?" I asked, my entire body trembling. He didn't look at me. "You need to understand, Chris. We have been a part of this community for a very long time," he said, his eyes still glued to the floor. "It's not a choice at this point. They tell us the date and we prepare. That's how we stay well and safe." Finally, he looked at me. "We are lucky that they enjoy my cooking skills, because that way we stay needed. I just wish your mother wouldn't enjoy it so much as well." Once or twice a year, we have a dinner party at our house. My father spends all day preparing food that only me and sometimes my friend Toby eat. As the guests arrive, however, they bring one other special ingredient. Once or twice a year, we have a dinner party at our house. Coincidentally, once or twice a year, somebody moves away from this town, and they never come back. Luckily, I'm a pretty decent liar, because I have no clue how I would ever be able to explain to Toby that he devoured his uncle for dinner last night. We have a tradition of going to buffet for my birthday dinner. As I got older, it became harder to get my small family together for a meal. My brother left for school and my parents both got pretty into their jobs. When the day came, I got lucky and my brother came back for a weekend. My parents far busy, but promised we could do dinner later with just them, and I accepted the offer. If I went out with them later, I could go with my brother now, so I got 2 birthday dinners. I picked out the place I wanted to eat at. There was a Chinese buffet pretty close by that I loved. The food was great, and they had some aquariums with massive koi inside for people to watch while they ate. The place looked beautiful as well, the entire restaurant covered in red and gold, making me wonder why it wasn't a more popular spot. The hostess silently directed us to an empty table. Besides the workers, we were the only ones inside. For how good the food was, I felt bad that this place wasn't packed. We got our drinks and went to load up our plates. The dinner was fairly normal for a while. I roasted my brother in the way only a little sister could. He pretended to be annoyed but had fun hanging out after being away for so many months. We tried to stay quiet though so we wouldn't disrupt the server's slow night shift. I swore I needed to come by this restaurant more often after eating 2 plates of different meat dishes. The food had no reason being this good. Soon I started to get full, leaving a few pieces of mushrooms and noodles on my plate. My brother had half a slice of cake on his. We sat and talked for a few more minutes, waiting for our stomach to settle before attempting to clean the last few bites. As we talked, someone else came in and sat at a table near ours. I glanced over at him, unable to help myself. I've never seen a person like him before.
His skin dark, but hair golden. His eyes a bright blue, almost white. It made them look fake, and I didn't know why someone would wear colored contacts to go out alone for dinner. The waitstaff suddenly started to act weird. They whispered something to the man sitting down and nodded towards us. I met my brother's eyes to see if he wanted to leave or stay to watch what this was all about. The man said something in a low voice I couldn't make out and waved off the waiter's concerns. The waiter gave us an almost scared look for half a second, then hurried away. I looked around to see that almost everyone working in the place suddenly started to hover nearby. The man dressed in a dark red vest with gold pinstripe threads. His shirt buttoned up all the way to his chin, making his neck look stiff. He rolled up his shirt sleeves to the elbows in such a neat way and buttoned them in place with glittering golden buttons. We both did our best to not stare, finding it hard. He didn't seem to notice the other two people looking at him. The stranger sat stiff and proper, waiting for something. The server came over with 2 plates in his hands, piled with stir-fried rice and some sweet and sour chicken. I gave my brother another look, wondering who this guy was that made him so important a buffet server would bring food to him. The plates were set down and the man started to eat, then more servers came over. My mouth dropped open as more plates were set down. Soon the entire table was covered with dishes overloaded with different kinds of food. I couldn't finish even a plate and a half of what had been placed down in front of this man. Did this guy have any friends coming by? No. The table he sat at could only hold 4 people. This was way more food than what 4 people could eat. In the time the plates had been set down, the man finished the first 2. He set the cleared plate aside and the server scooped them up for more to be set down in their place. This man wasn't big. He looked rail thin, and yet he already ate more than what myself and my brother did in 2 minutes after sitting down. We should have paid our bill and left, but we sat in our seats transfixed at the sight before us. We no longer tried to hide staring at this man eating. Another 4 plates set aside and the servers were sweating. They were acting as if a wild animal came inside but needed to act professional serving it. The music that played over some sort of hidden system cut out, letting us hear the sounds of his cutlery against his plates and faintly a dishwasher running somewhere in the kitchen. Oddly enough, the man wasn't making any disgusting chewing sounds. Well, until he got to the shrimp plate. The restaurant served whole shrimp with the head still attached. I've never tried eating them before. The man didn't take the heads off, he just shoved the whole thing in his mouth and I could hear the shells crunching as he chewed. I already lost track of how much food he'd already eaten. I caught my brother's eyes again and he mouthed the silent, "What the f***?" His face pale and I assume my own expression was the same look of horror. The strange man got to a place of some sweet and sour short ribs. They honestly were my favorite things served at the restaurant and I tensed up waiting to see if he ate them the same way he ate the shrimp. Shells were one thing, but bones? There was no way he was going to eat the bones. We both stared, mouths open as he ate through the pile with no issue at all, bones and all. The sound of his teeth cracking against the ribs, the only thing echoing inside the restaurant. This was insane. There was no way someone could eat like this. We had a chance to just leave. I doubted the owners would care if we fled without paying our bill by then. There was no way to figure out how much he ate with all the empty plates being taken away. We lost track of time, but I think it wasn't very long. This man ate more than what some people did in 6 months in under an hour. Finally, all the plates were removed and replaced by clean, empty ones covering his table. He turned his head to meet our gazes. I nearly screamed, having the set of bright eyes on us. We both froze, unable to move when he stood up, adjusting his vest. Even after eating so much, he didn't make a mess. No drips of sauce on his vest or at the corners of his mouth. He took the few steps to come over to our table, a smile on his face that made my body want to fold into itself. He stopped and placed a hand on the back of my chair, trying to look as friendly as possible. I wanted to scream. I looked up at my brother, silently begging him to do something. His hand went to his butter knife, gripping it so tightly that his knuckles turned white. If this man tried anything to his little sister, he might attack him. Thank God for older brothers. I am sorry you both needed to witness all of that. It must have been unnerving for you. but this restaurant had a wonderful dessert prepared for me tonight, and I needed to come in right away." The stranger spoke, his voice sweet and with the hint of a southern accent. "You ate the bones," I choked out, unable to say anything else. "Oh yes, I am able to digest things like that. One should always clean their plates. It's an insult to the chefs and the food otherwise," he said, and his eyes fell on our plates. We still had a few things left over. I started to sweat, my chest getting tight, waiting for him to do something. My mind going crazy with thoughts of what the hell this man really was and what he would do to us for not finishing our meals. But I suppose a few pieces left behind isn't the end of the world. After all, you did see something a bit strange. It's understandable to not finish your dinner with your stomach upset. I'll pay for your meals as an apology. I do know that my eating habits are a bit different from your own," he said, his friendly tone never wavering. I sighed and my brother relaxed his grip on the knife. I wanted to leave and nearly did so when I saw his face twist into horror. He saw something before I did, and I heard a sound of muffled screaming. I tensed again, praying that if I didn't move, nothing would happen. The sound got closer, and out of the corner of my eyes, I saw the servers dragging a bound man through the empty dining room. He struggled harder when he got closer to the table of empty plates. His pleas for help hidden under the cloth stuffed in his mouth and wrapped around his head. "Oh, there's my special dessert now. This one was found trying to climb into a window of a child in the dead of night. It seems that wasn't the first time he's done so, just the first time he was caught." My dinner threatened to come back up hearing those words. I let myself watch the servers place the struggling bound man on the table and on the plates. He broke a few as they forced him still. He kicked and thrashed, causing some of the broken shards to cut his clothing. The stranger didn't mind. He turned from our table to go back to his with a new meal. I only stayed long enough to watch the stranger's mouth literally unhinge from his jaw. I knew he wouldn't eat his dessert as neat and proper as he did with his dinner. I grabbed my brother by the wrist and dragged him out of that place, letting out a small scream when I heard the first sounds of the stranger biting down. We got into his car and got the hell out of there, neither of us speaking. We didn't even notice my brother accidentally stole the butter knife until we got back home. We threw it out, not wanting the thing in the house. It took hours for either of us to finally speak to each other. "Do you want to go to the movies instead of dinner for your birthday next year?" my brother asked in a shaking voice. I nodded, agreeing with him. It sucks that I could never eat at that restaurant again. I really liked their sweet and sour short ribs.